The cold steel handcuffs bit into my wrists as I stood in the shadow of the police station, feeling a mix of disbelief and terror. It had all happened so fast. One moment I was enjoying a quiet evening at home, and the next I was accused of a crime I didn't commit. A distinct chill swept through me as I recalled the sight of that shadowy figure fleeing the scene, blending into the darkness in a way that felt unnatural. It was a rainy Tuesday night, April 14th, 2021, in Hartwell, Ohio. The kind of rain that clings to your skin and soaks through to your bones. I had been sitting on my couch, binge-watching an old horror series, the soft glow of the television flickering against the walls of my otherwise silent home. The rhythm of the rain gently tapping against the window brought me comfort, lulling me into a false sense of peace. Then came the knock. It was firm, echoing through the emptiness of my home, pulling me out of my reverie. My heart raced as I looked at the clock. It was past 11 p.m. Who could be at my door at this hour? Nervously, I approached the door, peering through the peephole. All I could see was the silhouette of a man, his features obscured by the dim porch light. "Who is it?" I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. The figure remained silent for a moment, and panic surged through me. Just as I was about to retreat, the voice rang out, low and menacing. "Open up! It's the police!" Confusion washed over me. What had I done? Hesitantly, I unlatched the door and opened it a crack. Two officers stood there, their faces stern and unyielding. "We need to ask you some questions," one officer said, stepping into my home like he owned the place. I noticed the second officer standing behind him, eyes scanning the room as if searching for something. My heart raced as they began to explain that I was a suspect in a burglary that had taken place just blocks from my home. I couldn't believe it. There had to be some mistake. The officer's voice became a murmur in the background as panic threatened to consume me. I could feel the walls closing in, the shadows growing longer, almost like they were alive and reaching for me. "Do you have any alibis?" he asked, snapping me back to reality. I stuttered that I'd been home all night, alone. How could I explain that I was just lost in a show? My heart dropped when they revealed that a witness had identified me as the burglar. My mind raced, trying to piece together who could have claimed such a lie. But there was no one, just me and the shadows that lurked in the corners of my home. The officers left, after what felt like hours, leaving me with a palpable sense of dread. I was alone now, but the feeling of being watched lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. That night, sleep became an elusive dream. Every creak of the floorboards set my nerves on edge, and I swore I could see a shadow moving just beyond my vision. I kept replaying the evening's events in my mind, trying desperately to piece together what had gone wrong. Each memory turned over like an old coin, and the weight of my dread grew heavier. By morning, I felt like a ghost in my own home, haunted not just by shadows, but by fear and uncertainty. The rain had stopped, but the sky hung heavy with clouds, reflecting the turmoil in my mind. I didn't know who I could trust now. Even the familiar walls of my home felt foreign and hostile. Emboldened by a desperate need for answers, I decided to visit the police station. I approached the station at 10 a.m., my heart thudding in my chest. The building loomed over me like a specter, its brick facade a stark contrast against the dreary sky. Entering the waiting area was like stepping into a different world. The air was thick, filled with murmurs of guilt and despair, and I instantly felt out of place. The front desk officer eyed me warily, as if he could sense the turmoil boiling within me. "Can I help you?" he asked, barely looking up from his computer. His voice was flat, draining the little courage I had left. "I'm here to talk about the burglary case," I managed to say, my voice cracking under the weight of my predicament. He finally glanced up, his expression unreadable. "You should have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." As I sat waiting, I noticed a man in a dark coat pacing in the corner, his face obscured by the brim of his hat. Something about him sent shivers down my spine. Every time he glanced my way, I felt the blood drain from my face. It struck me that he might be connected to my case, some shadowy figure orchestrating this entire nightmare. Finally, an officer called me into a small room for questioning. The stark white walls felt claustrophobic, and the harsh, fluorescent lights hummed ominously above me. I recounted my side of the story, but the officer seemed disinterested, scribbling notes without looking up. I could feel the weight of that man's gaze still on me, his presence lingering like a bad omen. "We have a couple of witnesses," the officer stated coldly. "They say you match the description of the suspect." My heart sank deeper. "What description?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "A tall man, dark hair, wearing a hoodie," he replied casually, as if he wasn't talking about my life being shattered. I had dark hair, but hoodies were commonplace. The officer continued, "We also have footage from the neighbor's security camera. It shows a figure fleeing the scene right after the burglary." My stomach dropped. "Did it show my face?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. He met my gaze for the first time, and the look in his eyes felt like ice. "It was too grainy to tell," he said. "I felt the air leave my lungs. This was becoming an elaborate horror story I couldn't escape. Who had done this? Who was truly behind the mask of the shadowy figure? I realized I needed to find out more, if only to clear my name. As the officer dismissed me, I turned to leave, feeling the eyes of that man in the dark coat on my back once more. Outside, the sun was trying to break through the clouds, but it did little to lift the overcast weight resting on my shoulders. I decided to confront my fears and head to the neighborhood where the burglary occurred. As I walked the streets of the familiar suburb, I noticed the atmosphere shifted. The light felt different, almost surreal. I approached the house where the burglary had happened. A modest brick home with a neatly trimmed lawn. There were no signs of struggle, no broken windows, just an ordinary house in an ordinary neighborhood. Suddenly, the door creaked open and a woman stepped out, eyes wide with recognition. You? You were there that night?" she exclaimed. My stomach churned. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Panic gripped me as I realized I had never met her, yet she seemed convinced of my involvement. "You were the one who ran away. I saw you," she shouted, shaking her head in disbelief. My heart raced, and I stumbled back as the weight of her accusation hit me like a tidal wave. "No, you have to believe me. I'm innocent," I pleaded, but she just stared at me blankly. The world around us seemed to fade away, swallowed by shadows. It was as if the darkness was reclaiming me, pulling me into its depths, a depth where nothing made sense and everything felt like a nightmare. I turned to run, desperate to escape the suffocating fear that was closing in around me. My mind raced as I navigated the streets, colliding with memories and confusion. I needed to confront that man in the dark coat, the source of all this terror. I knew he was watching me, lurking in the shadows as he had been the entire time. My heart pounded in my chest, urging me to seek answers before it was too late. That night, I returned home, only to find my front door slightly ajar, swaying gently in the evening breeze. Terror coursed through my veins as I approached, the shadows seeming to dance around me. I stepped inside, the silence echoing my anxiety. Each creak of the floor made my heart pound louder. Was he already here? Had he been waiting for me? The atmosphere felt electric, charged with unseen energy. I glanced around, half expecting to see that figure standing in the darkness. My breaths were short and every nerve was on edge. As I turned toward the living room, something caught my eye, a flash of movement just beyond the curtain. I froze, heart racing, waiting for whatever demon was hiding to reveal itself. I took a cautious step forward, reaching for the curtain to pull it aside. With each inch the fabric slid, my heart raced faster, pounding against my ribcage. I drew in a breath, ready to confront the terror lurking within my home. But when the curtain fell away, there was nothing. Just a whispering breeze playing with the folds of the fabric. I felt a sense of denial wash over me. It was as if the shadows were mocking my fear. But then I turned to leave, and that's when I noticed it, the glint of something shiny through the crack of the closet door. My pulse quickened as I approached, the dread pooling in my stomach. I pushed the door wide open, revealing a pile of clothes, but there, resting on the top, was a small object. It was a silver locket, one I had seen before, a gift my sister had lost last Christmas. How had it ended up here? Panic swept through me again as the realization hit. Someone had been in my home while I was out. A shadow in the night, watching and waiting. My thoughts raced back to the man in the dark coat. He had left this as a message, a taunt, to let me know he was always one step ahead. The walls felt like they were closing in as I stumbled back, ready to bolt for the door. But before I could move, my phone buzzed violently on the table, making me jump. I snatched it up, my fingers shaking as I saw it was a text from an unknown number. "I know the truth about you. You can't run forever." A wave of fear crashed over me as I stared at the screen, unable to comprehend how this nightmare could get any worse. My heart raced like a drum, pounding against my chest as I desperately searched for a way out. Just the thought of that shadowy figure taunting me, whispering lies that had turned my world upside down, made my skin crawl. The unease and dread had spiraled into a full-blown terror. I had to get out of there. I dashed toward the door, nearly tripping over my own feet, panic driving me to the edge. But as I swung the door wide open, I stopped dead in my tracks. There, under the porch light, stood the dark-coated man, a sly smirk plastered on his face. "Looking for something, were we?" he taunted, his voice dripping with amusement. My body moved on instinct. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my heart galloping in my chest. But even through the barrier, I could sense him lurking, each second stretching out like an eternity, suffocating me in dread. I backed away from the door, feeling like a trapped animal. This was deeper than I had ever imagined. It wasn't just about clearing my name. It was a deadly game being played right in the shadows of my life. I needed to confront the truth, to face the dark figure who had turned my world upside down. But how could I, when the lines between reality and nightmare had become so blurred? The tension in the air was suffocating. I could feel my breaths coming in short gasps. My thoughts raced back to my sister and that locket. Had she somehow been dragged into this? The thought alone sent another wave of dread crashing over me. Maybe the truth was more horrifying than I could ever imagine, a truth that had been lurking in the shadows all along, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As I stood there, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty,